How can you defend somebody that you know is guilty? I get asked that question all the time when I'm talking about my job. How can you defend somebody that you know committed a crime? I'm a deputy public defender for San Diego County, and I've been doing this going on about 12 years now. And in case you don't know what a public defender is, it's an attorney appointed by the court to represent somebody in a criminal case who can't afford a lawyer. And my services for my client are completely free. They don't have to pay me anything. That includes the time I spend talking to them on the phone. It's free. The investigators that work on their cases to find witnesses to defend them, those are free. The law clerks I assign tasks to work on the cases, they're free. The substance abuse assessors who try to connect my clients to rehab programs in the county to help them with their alcohol or drug problems, free. The mental health clinicians that I have work at my office that connect my clients to the mental health services that they so dearly desire, free. And we even have a housing coordinator to make sure that there's a roof over my clients' heads and a warm place to sleep at night, free. I am so fortunate to work in a community of open arms and wholesome hearts to help reintegrate into the community those accused of crimes, whether or not they even committed those crimes, whether or not they are even guilty of those crimes. And if there's any bit of advice that I can give to all of you, if you're trying to find out what to do with your life, whether it's a career or something you want to volunteer or help out in your community, help those that no one else wants to help. Lend a hand to those that no one else wants to lend a hand to. And I guarantee that if you do that, you're going to find it to be one of the most rewarding experiences that will teach you to be compassionate for others. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging, but you're going to learn to love. You're going to learn to love and care about people that you may never thought you'd love or care about. So when I get asked that question, Jason, how can you defend somebody that you know is guilty? It's simple. Compassion, hard work, and love. I'm going to tell you about a couple clients I represented, and I bet, that at the end of these stories that you would want to defend them too, even if you knew that they were guilty of the crimes that they committed. And I'm going to use different names to protect confidentiality, so I'm going to start with a client named Chris. Chris was about 21 years old when I met him. Really nice kid. A carpenter, part of a union. He liked to build homes. Chris had really turned his life around. When he was 18 years old, he had made a bit of a mistake. He went in, he stole some rum from a liquor store, got into a shoving match with the clerk, and it landed him in jail. He pleaded guilty to a felony assault, and just so you all know, a felony is a crime where you could be punished by being incarcerated in jail or prison for more than a year. And it has devastating effects on a person. Not only do you lose several rights, but more importantly, especially at a young age of 18, Chris had to report a felony conviction on each and every job application, because that's what they ask. Are you a convicted felon? And he had to say yes. He also had to spend time in jail. He also had to be searched by a probation officer, check in, get drug tested. But Chris was different than a lot of folks. He overcame the odds at a very young age, and he cleared probation. He turned his life around. And although he was depressed and desperate at times, he found a career for himself, and he made something of himself. Unfortunately, until he met me. Because when he met me in court, that meant Chris was charged with a felony. So how did it all happen? Well, it was about 1 p.m. in the afternoon, broad daylight, and Chris was walking down the street, just going back to his car, when all of a sudden, a group of police officers came up to him and said, "Stop, put your hands behind your back." Chris did, he complied. The officers handcuffed him, and they asked him, they said, "Do you have any guns or knives or anything on you?" And he said, "Yeah, I do actually. I have one of my tools for work, a carpenter's knife in my pocket. It's in a sheath." And so the officer went and took it out and saw, yeah, it was a sheath knife, like something you might see at Home Depot. And then the officers continued to kind of investigate to figure out if Chris was the person they were looking for. You see, sometime before that, there was a car accident down the street, and in that accident, one car crashed into another, and then the car took off. And so the person that was hit, they called 911. They said, I was involved in a hit and run, and I saw somebody run and get out of the passenger side of the car, and they had some dark pants and a white T-shirt and a black hat. So the cops started to look for somebody that matched that description, and lo and behold, there's Chris walking down the street at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when the officers got done investigating and finished up, they realized Chris wasn't involved in that at all. So what do you think happened to Chris? He went to jail. He got arrested. Why? Well, who in here likes knives? Okay, good. I didn't see any hands, and nobody should be bringing knives here. But the point is if you carry a knife on you and it's concealed, and it's a fixed blade knife, think like a kitchen knife or a steak knife, that's a crime, and it could even be a felony. So Chris got arrested for having that sheath knife in his pocket, taken to jail. He had to pay thousands of dollars to bail out, and then he met me. He was charged with possession of a dirk or dagger. Dirk, from the Scottish Highlander days, but hey, that's California law. The bottom line is, it was a crime. So I met Chris, and I welcomed him with open arms, just like I do with any of my clients, because he's part of our community. And he was such a nice kid. We talked, I got to know him, and I realized we had a lot of things in common. He liked the Padres. He liked to work with his hands. He was really good at being handy and fixing things around the house. You guys can see my wife right now is nodding in agreement. I don't actually look at her, though. Just take my word for it. But the point is he was a really nice kid. But like a lot of my clients, he was very apologetic. He was clearly guilty. He had a sheath knife in his pocket, and he just wanted to move on. He was willing to take a plea deal to try to move on with his life, and he said he would plead guilty to, a lesser charge because he didn't really want another felony conviction on his record. He was trying to get his contractor's license, and this would interfere with it. And so I worked with Chris's family. There was such an outpouring of support. Family members, friends had written all these character letters, and I worked with my team at my office to collect those and try to negotiate a better deal for Chris. But the judge and the prosecutor, they didn't want to give that to Chris at the time based on his prior record. Chris was offered still to plead guilty to a felony. He might have to do some jail time. And then he'd be supervised by a probation officer again. And Chris, being the nice kid he is, he just said, well, I guess I just give up. I guess I'll just do it. But it didn't seem fair to me. It didn't seem right. Not to set Chris so far back for something like this, for a felony conviction. So we decided to fight it. And I worked with my law clerk, and he did an incredible job on this case. I don't know if you all know, but you have a right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. That is your Fourth Amendment right to the United States Constitution. In short, basically, the police cannot stop you without good reason, and they can't search you without a good reason. So we took it to court, and we fought for Chris. And my law clerk did an amazing job questioning the officer, and the officer came in to testify, and all of a sudden, things didn't really make a lot of sense. The officer testified that Chris didn't actually really match the clothing of the person who ran and got out of the car. Also, Chris apparently was walking towards where the accident happened, which didn't make a lot of sense. And then on top of it, we didn't even really know when the car accident happened. It might have been about an hour before Chris was arrested, or maybe even 2 hours. And then finally, the officer testified that he didn't even speak to the reporting party who contacted the police. It was another officer, and they weren't even there in court. And I was surprised. The prosecutor was surprised. The judge was surprised. But the judge was also unhappy and found that the prosecutor did not meet their burden and that this was an unreasonable stop. And so that knife was suppressed from evidence, and the prosecutor had to dismiss the case. Chris was clearly guilty. He was facing a felony in front of him, but we do it all over again to defend him from that. And he had that right. So we got out of the courtroom. He was very thankful. And he said, hey, Jason, I appreciate all you did, but I got to go back out into our community, and I got to get back to work. I got a job to do. And that's a story about Chris. But Chris's story is a lot different than a lot of the cases I get, a lot less severe. I'm going to tell you now about Anna. Anna is another client I represented in about her mid-20s. Anna had a knife too, except Anna used that knife and plunged it into her mother's back several times. Anna was charged with premeditated attempted murder. Premeditated meaning she planned it out. You see, Anna and her mother had been at odds for several years. They'd been fighting over Anna's drinking. Anna had a daughter, and Anna's mother felt like she was taking care of her more than Anna was, that Anna was never around, and tensions began to build until one night, Anna's mother was in the kitchen, and she was getting medicine for Anna's daughter, and after Anna's daughter had left the kitchen, Anna waited with a knife in her hand, and as her mom's back was turned, she stabbed her 3 times. One time puncturing her mother's lung, almost killing her. Police arrived, they collected the evidence, and Anna confessed to everything. She talked about hating her mother, resenting her, planning to do this for several days. We were in a tough spot. We didn't really have a great defense. But something didn't feel right to me. I met Anna, really nice girl, but really scared. Because in front of her, she was facing life in prison. Prosecutor had made a plea bargain and wanted about a decade in prison, but it didn't make sense to me. It didn't feel right. So I had to get to know Anna. She was such a nice girl. She had a great sense of humor. We liked a lot of the same music. And she taught me some cool Spanish phrases, because I only had about a 3rd grade level at that time, like "que onda," which I guess means "what's up?" And it's a good thing to say to the judge when things aren't going well, like, "Your Honor, que onda with that ruling?" But anyway, the point is, in some ways she was like me. And she had also lost people due to alcoholism. So I had to help her. I had to get to know her, and I had to work with that community of people in my office to get her back out into the community, because a decade in prison just didn't make any sense. And I'm not a therapist, but I had to spend so much time with her to finally figure out what was going on between her and her mom. And little by little, she started to share with me that she had been sexually abused, that her mom had dated men through, over the years, many different men, and that they would sexually abuse Anna, and everybody turned the other cheek, and just basically acted like it didn't happen. And I couldn't find all this information myself, so I got my investigators involved, and my investigators started to talk to friends of the family, members of the family, neighbors, and even teachers. You see, we got Anna's school records, and we saw in the school records that teachers were reporting that she was falling asleep in class. And this just wasn't a case of the Mondays. This was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A 7-year-old, an 8-year-old should not be falling asleep in class constantly. But she was, because of what was going on the night before. And as we learned and as we spoke to more people, they mentioned how these boyfriends would do things with Anna, take Anna to places by themselves, touch her in ways that made them feel uncomfortable, and unfortunately, nobody said anything. I had a substance abuse assessor from my office speak to Anna, try to find treatment for her alcoholism, that her alcoholism was a result of this abuse. And then I hired a psychologist, a professional, who conducted an evaluation of Anna to find out that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder because of the years of the abuse. And all of this information, this community of people that I had working with me with open arms and wholesome hearts, we were able to form a presentation to the prosecutor. And this certainly wasn't an excuse for what Anna had done, but a decade in prison wasn't the answer. And I'm very thankful that the prosecutor saw it that way, because we were able to work out an agreement for Anna. So she was no longer in jail, no longer drinking, and no longer at odds with her mom. And Anna's now back into our community. She's a great mother and an excellent graphic designer, and still has that great sense of humor. She's not teaching me much Spanish, but I could probably use it. But the point is she's part of our community. So, as you go out there, if you're looking for something to do, I encourage you, help those that no one wants to help. Lend a hand to those that no one else wants to lend a hand to. And if anybody goes out and asks you and says, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to help someone like that? I hope your answer is the same as mine. It's because of compassion, hard work, and love. Thank you.